I never thought it would happen to me. I had been in love with Mark for over 3 years. We shared everything: dreams, late night talks, weekend getaways. He was my world, my constant, my safe place. But sometimes love is not enough. It started subtly. Mark became distant. His phone was always face down, notifications ignored, calls taken in the bathroom. At first, I told myself it was stress from work, but deep inside, a knot of doubt started forming in my stomach, tightening with each passing day. One Saturday morning, I decided to surprise him. I packed breakfast and drove to his apartment. When I arrived, the door was slightly open. Confused, I stepped inside. The smell of cologne hit me immediately. Not Mark's, someone else's. My heart thumped as I heard soft laughter from his bedroom. Peeking inside, I froze. Mark wasn't alone. Another woman was there, sitting on his bed, laughing at something he said. They didn't notice me. They were too caught up in their own world. My hands shook, breakfast tray slipping from my grip, hitting the floor with a loud crash. Mark looked up and froze. His face went pale. The other woman scrambled off the bed, whispering something, running toward the door. Mark tried to reach for her, but I didn't let him explain. I ran out, tears blinding my vision, leaving the shattered breakfast and my broken heart behind. For days, I couldn't eat, sleep, or think straight. Every shared memory, every inside joke, every promise we had made felt like a lie. I questioned everything. How long had it been going on? Was she just a fling, or had Mark's heart already moved on without me? Then, late one night, I received a text. Just a simple, "I need to see you, please." It was from Mark. My chest tightened. Part of me wanted to believe him, to hear some explanation that would make this nightmare make sense. But another part, the part that knew there was no excuse that could erase the betrayal. I decided to confront him the next day. I needed answers, not lies, not apologies I couldn't trust. When I saw him, I could see the guilt in his eyes. But guilt doesn't undo the damage. It doesn't bring back the nights I cried alone, wondering what I had done wrong, questioning my worth. Mark tried to explain. He said it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything. But the proof was everywhere. In my mind, in the images I had glimpsed on his phone, in the way he avoided my gaze, and the emptiness of the words he spoke. Words without honesty are meaningless. I left that day knowing something had changed forever. Love was still there, but trust, that was gone. And without trust, even the strongest love can wither and die. I had to decide, could I forgive, or was this the end? The next morning, I made a choice. I wouldn't let this betrayal define me. I would reclaim my life, my dignity, and my self-worth. The journey wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to see it through. Mark had made his choice. Now, it was my turn. The next few days were a blur of confusion and anger. I tried to act normal around Mark, but every interaction was like walking on glass. His words felt hollow, his touch unfamiliar, and his excuses started to lose their meaning. I caught myself replaying that morning over and over in my mind. The laughter, the betrayal, the shock that froze me. One evening, Mark invited me out for dinner and to talk. I agreed, though my gut told me it was another setup for more lies. At the restaurant, he tried to explain, fumbling over words, apologizing too much, too fast. I listened quietly, drinking my water, heart pounding. Each sentence felt rehearsed, like he had prepared for this moment, but he hadn't prepared for the truth I carried inside me. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said, looking down at his hands. "It was a mistake. I never stopped loving you." His voice cracked, but it didn't matter. The woman on the bed, the texts, the stolen nights, they weren't mistakes, they were choices. I stayed calm, though fury simmered beneath the surface. A mistake doesn't happen for months, Mark. It doesn't happen repeatedly. You made a choice every single day, and it wasn't me. My voice trembled, but I held it steady. I needed him to understand the weight of what he had done. He tried to argue, to justify, to tell me it wasn't about her, that it was about something missing between us. I shook my head. No, it's about honesty, Mark. It's about respect, and you've shown neither. He went silent, finally realizing words couldn't repair what had been broken. Walking home, I thought about the life we had shared. The laughs, the plans, the dreams. Every memory was tainted now. Each one a reminder that love without trust is fragile, easily shattered. I had loved him fully, blindly, and he chose someone else over me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake,
staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every shared moment, every kiss. I realized that his betrayal wasn't just about the other woman. It was about the erosion of our foundation, the slow unraveling of everything I believed in. The next day, I decided to take control. I started going through his messages, carefully, deliberately. I didn't want to act out of blind anger. I wanted clarity, proof, and understanding. Each text I read, each photo I found, confirmed what I already knew. Mark had been living a double life. He had chosen secrecy, lies, and deceit over honesty and love. With the evidence in hand, I confronted him again, this time in our apartment. I laid everything out, every message, every meeting, every instance he had betrayed my trust. He didn't deny it. Instead, he tried to plead, to make excuses, to ask for forgiveness. But forgiveness isn't a band-aid for broken hearts. I realized that healing would come from leaving, not from staying in a house built on lies. By evening, I had made my decision. I would reclaim my life, walk away with my dignity, and refuse to let betrayal define me. Mark tried to stop me, but I was resolute. Each step toward independence, each decision to trust myself over him was a victory. That night, I packed a bag, leaving nothing behind that could tie me to a love that had been corrupted. I left our apartment quietly, not out of fear, but out of strength. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was mine. I had survived heartbreak, uncovered betrayal, and learned that self-respect is worth more than any relationship built on lies. The first step toward freedom was terrifying and liberating at the same time. I knew the road to healing wouldn't be easy, but it would be real. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope, a hope that I would find peace, clarity, and eventually trust again. The following week was difficult, but necessary. I stayed with a friend temporarily, giving myself space to breathe and think. Every day was a battle between heartbreak and clarity, between anger and the desire to move forward. But slowly, I began to reclaim control over my own life. I started journaling, writing down everything I had felt, everything I had discovered, and everything I wanted for my future. It was painful, but it was cathartic. Each word on the page helped me untangle the mess Mark had left behind and reminded me that my feelings were valid. Mark reached out again, sending texts and leaving voicemails, trying to reconnect, trying to explain, but I didn't respond. I realized that healing doesn't come from explanations or apologies. It comes from reclaiming your sense of self and your boundaries. I couldn't allow him to pull me back into a world of deceit. One afternoon, I walked through the city park, watching families, couples, and friends. Their happiness felt like a mirror, showing me what I deserved: honesty, respect, and love that wasn't tainted by betrayal. I promised myself I wouldn't settle for less again. At work, I focused on projects that had long been neglected, pouring my energy into productivity and purpose. My colleagues noticed a change in me: confidence, clarity, and a subtle resilience that wasn't there before. I was rediscovering who I was outside of Mark, outside of the relationship that had consumed me. Late at night, I would sometimes check my phone, expecting a message, a plea, or a call from Mark. But over time, the urge faded. I realized that his presence no longer dictated my happiness. I was reclaiming my time, my energy, and my emotions. Then came the day I returned to our apartment to collect the last of my belongings. Walking through the rooms, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. Each object I packed, photos, gifts, clothes, was a memory, a fragment of a love that had ended not because of lack of feeling, but because of betrayal. I took one last look around, inhaling the familiar scent of our home, and then closed the door. The finality was liberating. I was no longer a prisoner of someone else's choices. I had survived the storm of deception and was emerging stronger on the other side. That evening, I sat in a quiet cafe, sipping tea, watching the city move around me. For the first time in months, I felt grounded, connected to myself rather than to someone else's lies. I knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would be authentic, honest, and entirely my own. I began imagining a future untainted by betrayal, a life where love would be reciprocal, where trust wouldn't be broken, and where I would never compromise my dignity for someone else's deceit. It was a future I was determined to reach, step by step, day by day. By the end of that week, I had a newfound sense of independence. I realized that the heartbreak, though excruciating, had been a lesson in self-worth. I was learning to trust myself, to listen to my instincts, and to honor my feelings. And in that moment, I finally understood. Surviving betrayal isn't just about leaving someone behind. It's about finding yourself again, stronger and wiser, ready to love, but never at the cost of your own truth. Weeks passed, and life slowly began to feel normal again, or at least as normal as it could after betrayal. I had moved into a new apartment, smaller but cozy, a space that felt entirely mine. No reminders of Mark, no shadows of lies. Just me, my thoughts, and the quiet hum of a life I was rebuilding. I started reconnecting with old friends, people I had neglected during the relationship. Lunches, coffee dates, long phone calls, they reminded me that life existed outside of heartbreak, that there was support and love beyond the one person who had betrayed me. I realized that I didn't need Mark to feel validated or whole. I was capable of creating my own happiness. Then, one evening, Mark reached out again, this time via email. He apologized profusely, claiming he had changed, that he realized his mistakes, that he wanted to work things out. I read the email, felt a pang of old emotion, but then closed it without responding. Some wounds, I realized, are not meant to be reopened. Some doors, once closed, must remain closed. Instead, I focused on myself. I took up running, long walks in the park, journaling every morning. I explored new hobbies, painting, photography, cooking, and discovered talents and passions that had lain dormant. Each step was a declaration. My life belonged to me, not to someone else's deception. One night, I met someone new at a gallery opening, Alexandra, a kind and genuine presence. We talked for hours, laughed freely, shared stories of our lives. For the first time since Mark, I felt an effortless connection, a spark untainted by lies. It was cautious, careful, but it was real. Doubt crept in. I would think about Mark, about the pain he caused, about the years I had invested. But each time, I reminded myself, the past had shaped me, but it would not define me. Trust had been broken, but resilience had been forged. I was stronger than I had realized. Months later, I visited the old neighborhood where Mark's apartment had been. Driving past, I felt only indifference. The heartbreak no longer held sway over my emotions. I had healed. I had grown. I had reclaimed my power. Life wasn't perfect, but it was authentic. Each day brought small victories, confidence in my choices, joy in independence, peace in knowing that I would never compromise myself for someone else's mistakes again. I reflected on everything I had endured, the lies, the betrayal, the heartache, and I realized that pain, while excruciating, had taught me invaluable lessons: self-worth, boundaries, discernment, and the strength to walk away from what was harmful. The betrayal that once threatened to break me had become the catalyst for transformation. I was no longer the person who had cried silently in my bedroom, unsure of my value. I was a person who had survived deception, reclaimed dignity, and opened the door to genuine love and happiness. By the end of part 4, I felt a sense of completeness. Not because the past was erased, it wasn't, but because I had faced it, accepted it, and chosen myself over lies. The journey wasn't over, but I was walking it on my own terms. The following morning, I woke with a calm I hadn't felt in months. The apartment was quiet, peaceful, a sharp contrast to the storm I had endured with Mark. For the first time, I didn't feel panic, betrayal, or anger. I felt clarity. I had survived. I had learned. And now I was free to choose my own path. I spent the day doing small things for myself: cooking breakfast, organizing my new apartment, playing music I loved without worrying about anyone else's opinions. Each action, simple as it seemed, was a statement. My life was mine again. Later, I met Alexandra for coffee. She had become a steady, reassuring presence in my life. Our connection was gentle, genuine, and honest, a stark contrast to the chaos I had left behind. We laughed, shared dreams, and slowly started building trust that wasn't rushed or forced. With her, I felt a possibility I hadn't thought existed anymore: that love could be kind, patient, and real. But even with new beginnings, memories of Mark lingered. I remembered the betrayal, the stolen moments, the lies. Sometimes I felt the pang of sadness, a reminder of what I had lost. But I also felt pride. Pride in walking away, pride in reclaiming my dignity, pride in choosing myself over deceit. One afternoon, while walking through the park, I noticed a young couple arguing. I felt a twinge of empathy, remembering my own heartbreak. But instead of pain, I felt understanding. I knew the signs of betrayal, the silent suffering, the difficult decisions. And I silently thanked myself for having the courage to leave before it consumed me entirely. In the weeks that followed, I focused on growth: personal, emotional, and creative. I wrote, painted, explored the city, and met new people. Every day was a step away from the past and a step toward a future where honesty and respect formed the foundation of any connection I allowed. Occasionally, Mark tried to reach me again, through texts, calls, or social media. But each time, I remembered the lessons I had learned. His apologies couldn't erase the months of deception. His pleas couldn't restore trust. I had chosen freedom, self-respect, and the promise of a life built on truth. Months later, I realized how far I had come. I laughed freely, loved without fear, and trusted carefully. The scars of betrayal remained, but they were reminders of resilience, not weakness. I had endured the heartbreak, faced the lies, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more capable of creating the life I deserved. One evening, as I sat by my window watching the city lights, I smiled. I thought about the journey, the pain, the discovery, the healing. I had learned that betrayal could hurt deeply, but it could never destroy the spirit that refuses to surrender. I had chosen myself. I had reclaimed my life.